Welcome to today's Fire Engineering Google Hangout. We have some phenomenal guests for you. We have Sam Villani and Dave Polikoff, both from Montgomery County, Maryland. We have Jonah Smith from Charlotte Fire Department, and we have Rex from Fairfax County, Virginia. These guys are some of the leading experts in our field on portable radios. Today, I want to be more of a student than a teacher. I have some questions for our distinguished panel here today, and I'm hoping that they could school me. My fire department just received New Haven. We just received a grant to replace all our portable radios. So portable radios always tends to be a popular subject, and it tends to be one of our leading failures, communications on the Fireground. A black cat just walked behind Sam Villani. He's a troublemaker. So, but this is not possible without Tenkata fabrics. Now, Tenkata fabrics go into pretty much every set of turnout gear, regardless of manufacturers, across our entire spectrum of PPE, and we really appreciate what Tenkata fabrics does for the fire service and what it does for firefighters. It's about you. It's about going home to your family at the end of the shift, and Tenkata's out there putting out education for the fire service. I'd like to start off with a question to the panel. I'll pass it to Rex first. We fought, and the union here fought so hard to get everybody portable radios on the Fireground, and we're moving headlong into the 1980s, so it took us a long time to get there. And one of the issues that we see as battalion chiefs and division officers is we see when everybody has a radio on the Fireground that we're getting constant feedback, and you're trying to get a message out, and the guy who's standing right, or girl standing right next to the officer, is creating feedback. Is there anything wrong, in your professional opinion, where if after the division officer has accountability for the crews, the situation has stabilized, and you're working a fire, and your crew's standing right next to the officer, to have the firefighters that are with their company officers to shut off their radios or to turn them down while you're operating on that floor? And I always say to the officers, if the member is going out to change a bottle with another member, it's your responsibility as the officer to say, make sure your radio's back up, or to turn on your radio. But it seems that sometimes being safe is creating another safety issue because you got all this feedback, and I'd really like your opinions across the board. So if we could start off with Rex, am I crazy for suggesting that, or how do you guys work in Fairfax?
So that's a common problem. It's one that we have experienced and we continue to experience. However, our general policy is that unless you're a unit officer, you turn your radios down roughly 25%. That helps with the feedback as well as just giving some of our new officers and even some of the senior officers information about the things that they could do, like shielding the mic, holding it right up against your face piece, and using your hand to shield the mics, as well as turning away. Sometimes if you're with multiple companies, as we often find ourselves in a small house, that you just go into another room, because typically you can hear the feedback from the other firefighters and know when it's not working really well. But 25%, that's our general policy.
And you found that works well in Fairfax?
Yeah, I think it's helped to control the problem. Today, I think it's a lot better than it was just a couple years ago. There's been a lot of focus on Fireground communications, and at the end of the day, it's really about providing information to our folks, of which for years we just kind of disregarded the radio. We didn't know much about it other than to use it to talk. There's a lot to it, and getting that information out helps.
Yeah, that's the fire service. We didn't use radios, and then there's a lot of talking on the radios, not a lot of communicating on the radios. So we definitely need to go there. Jonah, what do you call it? What Rex saying makes a little bit more sense than what I was saying about having them shut off. We haven't tried the 25% thing. What's worked in Charlotte, and kind of educate me here?
Yeah, we're very similar with that. We put an enormous amount of people in a very small space, just like Fairfax. We're very fortunate with that. So we typically, like on my company, my folks know you always keep your radio on, because if it's off and we get in a pinch and you got to call a Mayday, you're not going to remember to turn it on.
Jonah just froze. So while Jonah is froze, let's go to Dave.
And you know, typically on the Fireground, you can get some people spread out a little. You know, it just room makes it better. You know, but everybody here, especially when we transitioned to digital 4 or 5 years ago, the echo helped with people realizing, oh, that's me, because they can hear it in their mic. They cover it or walk away, or you know, turn the other way. But we use something similar. We haven't come out with a policy or procedure per se on it, but that 25% level is generally what my folks on my apparatus keep it at, roughly, because you know, again, if it's real important, they know I'm gonna.
Jonah keeps freezing. So I assume what you're going to say is you keep it at 25%. If it's real important, the officer's going to ensure that they relay the information. Let's go to Dave Polikoff, and hopefully Jonah will be able to fix this thing. Dave, what do you find in Montgomery County, Maryland?
All of our portables, we have the extended mics, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We have the capability of controlling the volume on our extended mics, so you don't have to dig into our pockets or into our portable radio pouches, where we can turn the radios down. When I was riding on the apparatus, I found that a lot of the guys that were riding in the buckets would turn their radio portables on, and it would create an issue when you would go to talk on the radio. So you get a little cognizant of that. I tell them, you know, make sure you guys turn around your radios before I talk on the radio, so we don't sound like a bunch of clowns trying to communicate with the feedback going on. But normally a gloved hand, even if you forget to turn it down right away, a gloved hand over top of it will take care of that feedback. It takes away that annoying where you're not getting your message out to people. You don't have to repeat yourself several times.
My favorite thing to do as host is to put Sam Villani on the spot. So Sam has a background not only as a company officer, but he was one of those USAR dirt diggers, specialists, used to wear the T-shirt and everything, communications guy. So Sam, explain to our listeners out there why covering and shielding the mic works. And I'll be honest, I have no idea why. So can you enlighten us?
Yes, absolutely. Primarily, think about when you're engaged in operations. It's kind of difficult depending on where you wear your radio to adjust your volume. I know in setting up any of our interop switches or anything where we need to eliminate feedback, we keep at least on the Motorola radios the volume at 50%, and basically that anything louder than that starts to create some kind of feedback. Obviously, the reality in operations is we want it as loud as possible so we can hear everything. So what Chief Polikoff said, what Frank said, or what has been said a couple times here since we started, shielding and turning works really well. Not unlike the nuclear thing, time, distance, and shielding. If you can create some distance, shield your mic, turn away, at least your crew members while you're communicating, or if you can blade yourself away and even adjust higher or lower, that works pretty well. The radio technology, it's weird because the technology built into the radios that eliminates a lot of the background noise also creates a lot of problems for us, not only with this, but also when you try to communicate with your VibraAlert activated. There's some issues because the VibraAlert is kind of in the same voice spectrum or sound spectrum as our voice, the human voice, so your voice gets choppy. And so the things that are built into this radio to make them optimal and to eliminate background noise of a saw operating, somebody breaking a door down, sirens, that kind of thing also kind of hinders us to an extent, and educating ourselves on how to best overcome that is the best way to overcome it.
Jonah, you back with us? You want to add into this?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did about 3 weeks ago. Asheville Fire Department did some tests with one of the brands or the engineers came up, and that issue with the VibraAlert is a major issue that we're seeing. I know I've spoken to some folks in D.C., the Nova area, including Rex, about it. The VibraAlert being in that same voice, the spectrum, and that gets where it gets scientific that. Some folks on this Hangout understand, but it's well beyond my realm of understanding. But it's in the same exact spectrum, and so it eliminates the voice. And what they did is they found folks where they have 5 separate firefighters, female, male, different ethnicities, different heights, different voice tones, and it was fascinating because the female voice, and I think it was in the Novi area, they had an issue with the female voice and the voice canceling stuff. Well, the female voice sounds better with the vibra alert, but men, we're pretty much out when the vibra alert hits and we start screaming. There's an enormous problem with it. The manufacturer is attempting to address pretty aggressively, and it's not something until it happens on your Fireground in New Haven, and you get, up there, y'all get new radios. You say, man, these things work great. Then you have your first Mayday 5-10 years from now is the first time you'd hear it, or the first time somebody has a vibra alert and using proper radio discipline, which none of us do. So it's very interesting to see how deep all this goes. There's a rabbit hole here that there's so much information, and and there's so much science that falls into it that we don't understand. So,
Rex, is there a way? Has anybody, or Jonah, or anybody, feel free to jump in here? Did they look at when they have the voice emitters? Did that help at all, or it was still the same? It still had that same cancellating factor.
Well, the cancellation occurs in multiple mics within the RSM, the speaker mics. So it's got, in the model that we have, it's got 2 mics. And the way that that's designed is to take your voice in one, take the noise from the other, and cancel the other. So the voice emitter, depending on what your air pack is, we've done a tremendous amount of testing to try to clean up some of the communication factors by testing the human voice coming out of the voice amp, where to put the mic, is it better or worse from the emitter we were Scott reading apparatus. So we found now that we've gone to the HT 3000s that actually going back to the emitter sounds a little bit better. For a while we were dominantly talking through the voice amp. So, there's a lot of factors. The codec and voice cancellation is very complicated. We've done a lot of work with our particular radio manufacturer to address some of the anomalies that we have with canceling out the different voices. As a matter of fact, we've been doing pretty significant department-wide grip training at our academy. We do almost a week full box along multiple Maydays, and what we experienced is that that when the people scream over the radio, they completely get lost. And the live alert, that's a whole different other animal. But it's the technology is great, and then sometimes it's not. And it's trying to find the workarounds.
Let me go to Sam Villani, because Rex, you're breaking up here, and I want to make sure that we can hear you. Sam, can you kind of relay what you got out of what Rex was saying?
Yeah, basically, and I know other departments have also done studies. They've I don't know if they've necessarily been published outside of their departments. I know, for example, Sam Hiddle from Wichita, he and I had some dialogue about a year and a half ago regarding this, and I think they actually did some type of formal publishing a document. I'm pretty sure it was interdepartmental, though, on best practices. It's really, and I know the Motorola engineers know about it because there's a whole, it's called MTUG, there's a Motorola technical users group that's out there that a lot of our, for example, in Montgomery County we have, and in DC we have a couple of our communications interoperability group members that are on that panel, and they know about this stuff mainly because I've brought it up to them, and I know other people have as well. And so they're trying to figure out a way to mess with this or adjust the noise canceling software to better handle the different range of human voice. And like Rex was saying, I think a lot of departments have experimented with voice amplifier without, up against the diaphragm without. Obviously, MSA has a single voice diaphragm in the front. The 83,000 face pieces on the Scots have them on the sides. I think it would be interesting to see Motorola and some of the other communications organizations out there do more research on this and come up with the best practices that's good for everyone, and that breaks it down by radio, by software in the radio also, because not everybody has the most up-to-date stuff, and also by the SCBA manufacturer.
And that's something that a lot of departments could do that they don't do. How many departments just had their guys and girls wearing a mask, and actually what's the best place to put the radio? So I'll start with Dave and go along, say what manufacturer, we're not endorsing any manufacturers, but what kind of radios you have and what kind of SCBA you have, and where have you found it best to get your message out? Start off with Polikoff.
The radios we're using, Sam, stop me if I'm wrong, because we've changed a couple times. We have it's the APX, right, Sam? Yes, no?
Yeah, the Apex. We use the 6000 series for the firefighters and the 7 for the officers.
Right. Now I use in the car we have both, and my personal radio is a 7000 series, and we found actually this issue with the voice canceling out with the Vibra Alert was brought up to my attention a couple years ago by, I believe Sam called me and told me they were practicing that down in Rockville, and we tried it out. Now we've got an entire video of it. I think Dallas Lip had put together in reference to the way you can shield your radio, best practices and things like that. And that's how we've approached it, and I know that that it's helped quite a bit, especially when we're using saws and in noisy environments and things like that. But the radios that we're using, I believe, are the same radios that I think that's pretty much running throughout the entire COG region, our council government region, which is Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. I believe Frederick's getting into them now, Howard County, as well as Montgomery County. We're all using pretty much the same radios, and getting off track a little bit, it's come a long way where I've got almost every single county in the COG in my particular radio. I can communicate with anybody anywhere, almost in the entire Washington metropolitan, even going up to as far as Howard County, the suburbs of Baltimore, with my particular radio. And it's the problems are the same. They're not unique, and we found that education has gone a long way. We're really not running into these issues where we can't really hear people anymore. And once you put a face piece on, it's kind of a crapshoot, one way or the other.
Jonah, what's your experience with the best way to talk through the mic when you got a mask on?
It would be I think IFC came out with the best practices. Saying 1 inch from the voice emitter. I have seen some folks put their hand, like on the Scott mask particularly, to have a hand on the Vibra Alert to keep it from vibrating as much, which has helped at times, but still, again, in an emergency situation, I'm not going to be doing this and calling a Mayday, so it's still an issue, but that has been effective. If you're finishing up an assignment, you're on your way out, telling the chief you're on your way out, holding that Vibra Alert. We have seen some success with that, but day in, day out, with the XE mics on the Motorola products, we've seen that it was best to 1 inch from the voice port. When we tested some other manufacturers here recently, we had a new RFP come out about eight or so weeks ago. We awarded the contracts, but we were using some other manufacturers, and it was better to place it near the Adam's apple on some firefighters. It worked better. I know that's a trick in analog systems. It works pretty well. With digital, it's kind of like he was saying, it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes as to what you're going to get, but if you don't test it, you'll never know. That's one of the biggest things people should get out of their radios is, what does our radio do when I press this button? Well, call dispatch and figure it out. Figure out what it sounds like when the pass alarm goes off.
And one more thing, Frank. One of the things that we found that we try to tell our people is once you put your face piece on, you don't need to yell. Continually talk in a normal speaking voice. And once you start yelling, it really starts to get distorted and muffled. And again, the 1 inch away from the voice emitter, the side of the neck has worked well. Any place near behind the ear that you can get your extended mic up there, it works well. So the biggest thing is there's no reason to yell when you're talking through your face piece. It just starts to get more distorted. So normal speaking voice, and not to press it right up against the face piece.
Rex, weigh in on this. Hopefully your connection came back.
Sure. We have APX 6000s for frontline personnel, 7000s for the battalion chiefs. We wear Scott with the new HT 3000s. And what we found was currently with our code plug to put the mic up against the voice emitter and then tilt it just a little bit so the other mic, the second mic, gets some of the ambient noise. So it's directly up against the voice emitter, and you're using the remainder of your hand to kind of shield any other noise coming in. Easier said than done, but we do a lot of practice. There's a lot of emphasis on that. It's a work in progress, but for us that seems to work out the best. And then the going up against the neck is a good way to overcome the vibro alert, unique to Scott. However, that's not a solution for everybody.
Rex, you cut out when you were originally speaking. Can you just, and you just mentioned it again, what do you mean by the second mic? Because I'm sure some listeners are out there saying, what's he talking about?
Sure. So the remote speaker mic, the head of the corded piece that goes to the body of the radio, for our particular radio has two mics in it. And they're separated by, I don't know, about 1.5 inches or so. The way that the noise cancellation system works is that your voice goes in one, the noise goes into another, and then the algorithms detect what is noise and they cancel out the second piece to it. There's some manufacturers that have more than two. I believe some of the other, Harris has one that has either 4 or 6 different mics. So that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And to be honest with you, I didn't know that. So I'm learning as we go here. What was Jonah's grabbing a mic? I thought he had a call or something. He ran out. Go, Jonah. Unmute yourself and let us know what you're.
Yeah. So you see there's the two mics he's talking about, and actually on the face of this radio, you have one on the rear and one on what we would consider the front in the old days. So that's the two mics he's talking about.
All right. Now let's go back to Rex has done some great work. I was really familiar with it. I never met him before today about mics in a Mayday situation burning through, and it goes back to that old back and forth. Do you wear your radio on the front of your gear or underneath your gear? Now, John Kay, who's a Detroit firefighter, when I lived in Station 31 in Montgomery County, he used to say, for officers, he said, the officers who want you to know they're an officer wear their mics outside of their radio, and the officers that know they're officers wear them underneath the coat. So we'll start with Rex, and then we'll go around. What I want to know is what's the best way to wear the radio, and then about the particular thing of the mic burning through and keying the mic.
Sure. So that's, prior to development of that report, it was really, there were some shared authors in that. We had a lot of folks put input into that particular report. It's more of a report than it was a study because we took studies from a lot of different places. That being said, based on the research that we have done, it's in my opinion that under the coat, based on the technology that we have now, is the best and safest reasons. As long as you wear it below your coat. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you there for a second. So you're saying under the coat is the best way?
Yes.
Agree.
Based on the technology we have today. Now, there's a lot of emerging technology with Bluetooth and SCBA integration, but for right now, I think under the coat is the best, especially to protect the cord.
Sam, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I agree. There had been some, I guess, some momentum, some direction by certain agencies a few years back about the exterior pocket on the PPE coat being the best, and obviously we've evolved since then. Realized that obviously that's up pretty high. It does a number of things: comfortability factors and retaining factors. Comfortability, you get stabbed in the neck with the antenna from time to time. You've got excess cabling hanging out between the connection between your RSM and your actual radio, the remote speaker mic and the radio, and also we had some instances in folks doing training where the radio, the Velcro would fail and the radio would fall out. Keeping the radio low, the good of it, and in your coat, obviously, it's shielded from the heat. Your mic can come out part of your flap. You can Velcro around it, get a pretty good secure seal to keep that interface good here. And you've got all that exposes the RSM and a few inches of cabling, which is I mean, in my opinion, it's optimal. The only caveat to that I will say is, and I've been talking about it a little bit on the tweeter box here and there on Twitter, is if you have communications problems, one of the easiest ways to resolve it, if it's a reception issue, is to get your radio up high and near a window. So if you're in a basement operating and you've lost comms, get to a window, hold your radio high. Now, if it's under your coat, you're in an IDLH and you're operating, it's going to be impossible for you to do. But you can at least ensure that your radio is oriented vertically, so the antenna's at the top and the battery's at the bottom on the side of your hip, because that's the way the radios like to operate is vertical. So yeah, I mean, right now, optimally, that's our best way. I under the coat with the majority of the radio shielded from the IDLH.
What's old is new again, because Providence back in '92, they had a Mayday in a basement where the Mayday didn't get out, and then when they went back to the same basement and just changed the orientation of the antenna, it got out, and that was like in early '90s, late '80s. So that is very important. As for the pockets, with the radios in the pockets, I've experienced the same thing. We were teaching a RIC class in El Paso, Texas, and they had the pockets on Fort Bliss, and every time we'd put them in that stress-induced environment for the Mayday and we drop them, the radios would come shooting out across the room. So it was like, if you don't even have your radio, how are you going to be able to use it? So I think that's a great point. One thing that we get a lot of questions, and I got a question on Twitter for, is what's your opinion, and I'll start with Dave Polikoff, about switching to a different channel. Now, here's my take on it in a Mayday situation. When you switch to a different channel, unless your department trains on it all the time, it creates radio insanity, because now when the guy or girl's on the wrong channel and you call them, now you got to assume almost that that's a Mayday, or send somebody to investigate of why they're not talking. New Haven, we started something new under our new chief of operations, which worked out really well. We used to switch just to a tactical channel when we got on scene of a working fire, and it would always end up that somebody was on the wrong channel. So now what we do is when a box is dispatched, they name the tactical channel in the initial dispatch. So while you're going to the call, before any of that stress or any of your minds thinking of 100 different things, everybody's switching to the radio channel before they even get to the fire. That has worked for us in the city of New Haven. So I think that's a great thing. But my take on it is, if you don't switch radio channels on a regular basis in an IDLH environment or train on it all the time, it almost sometimes sets you up for failure. What I'd like to see departments do, this is just my opinion, is put the RIT team and the chief that's managing the Mayday on a different channel, and companies that are going in as part of that rescue, because they're not in the IDLH environment. They're throwing ladders, cutting bars, whatever they're doing. The chief can reiterate, RIT team, I want you on a different channel. He's on a different channel, standing right next to the chief here in the Mayday. That might be a way to cut that down. I think that eventually we might see the ability for dispatch to move people to a different channel without having people actually hit it. But I don't think we're there yet. Let me start off with Dave Polikoff. And Rex, you're one of the leading experts in the country, and your connection is horrible. So I really hope that we get you back on this thing, and we'll try you one more time. But let me start off with Polikoff. Go ahead.
Way we started off in Montgomery, when we started with our Mayday policy, in the beginning it was, everybody switched to an alternate channel, with the exception of the person having the Mayday and the person running the Mayday. ultimately what happened is that you would end up with some people hearing it and switching over, or some people not hearing it and switching over. So what we decided was it's the incident commander's choice. If you want to switch over, you can. My personal philosophy is I've had a couple of Maydays that resolve themselves pretty quickly. We keep everybody on the same channel. Once the Mayday is acknowledged, the next message that goes out from the incident commander is maintain radio silence unless you have a relevant emergency. Immediately what I'll do is get a dispatcher over on an alternate channel. Everybody stays on the same channel. Everybody hears what's going on. Everybody continues to do their job. We can move the rapid intervention company in. I personally don't like switching to another channel because it only takes that person on the Mayday to think that they're supposed to switch to another channel. Now you've lost radio communications with them. Or if you just keep everything as it is, you can maintain that radio integrity and still talk to the person that's having the initial Mayday. Most people are good with the radio discipline. They're not going to get on the radio once a Mayday is going on, and they're to give you messages that aren't important enough to interrupt the actual Mayday situation. And we have trained with that. We did 2 rounds. We're on our 2nd round of rapid intervention training in the county through our training academy, our in-service training, and we are doing Mayday. Mayday's called, and everybody maintains the same channel, and the chief runs the Mayday as well as the incident. Again, like I said, we've been practicing that for the last almost 2 years now. We've been doing this is the 2nd part of our Mayday training. So we like to stay on the same channel. We have a script that we're supposed to run off of. It's on our command charts, on the back of our command charts, that things that need to be hit right away so we can effectively manage that Mayday. One thing I do want to go back to and talk about when we talked about where we're wearing our portable radios, when Fairfax did put out their, well, like you said, it wasn't a study, but the information that was put out of how the remote microphone cables were burning through, it kind of had a knee-jerk reaction in Montgomery County. They were saying, well, you can't wear your portable radio straps anymore. You have to wear them in your portable pocket. And it all came down to was, well, the radio shield now, but the radio and the radio cord is still outside the pocket, and the moment you go to talk on your radio, it comes out of the pocket if you stuff it in. So it didn't really make sense. I'm a wear it on the outside kind of guy when I do get to go inside. Now that I actually have a remote mic that has the capability of changing the channels on my remote mic itself, I can wear it under my coat and still change channels or talk groups effectively without having to actually reach down and grab my radio and change channels. So.
Rex, to you?
So going to the subject of RIT and Mayday, we're doing a full-scale RIT evolution with a box alarm every Monday, and we tried a couple instances of switching radio channels for the Mayday part of the incident. And really that is driven by the person calling the base. So what we've done is we've tried to replicate the Houston event where the guy on the other end is talking the entire time. So the ability to...
Rex, we're losing you. Shannon, try to drop Jonah completely off. Maybe that'll increase the bandwidth. I don't know that. I'm just kind of making it up. And let me go to Sam Villani.
All right, there we go. So yeah, we're talking about where we're wearing our radios, right? Or we're talking about jumping off.
No, we're talking about switching channels. Polikoff
right.
Going back and forth. You know, typical.
Yeah,
you can never be
I tell you,
on one task at a time.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about your the good majority of our calls, we don't have people parsed onto different talk groups. We don't have a vent group on one talk group, and there really is no need to make that extra announcement and change people because again, the history has shown not everybody makes it on the right talk group. I mean, let's face it, on just about every incident I've ever ran where we have work, where people are actually engaged in either forcing doors or suppressing fires or opening windows up or tossing ladders, you at least have one or two people who get knocked off the talk group just from their movement, right? So trying to have somebody with a gloved hand, even with a lot of practice, to change talk groups is very difficult. It doesn't work. What made me a huge believer was the active Mayday with a rescue that they had in Prince George's County in Kentland in Company 46's area a couple years back. Everything stayed on the same channel, ran smooth as ice. There was a lot of discipline by the companies involved, the quick removal. After that, I said, I don't know why we would even think about changing talk groups. It makes no sense to me. It all boils down to discipline by the individual company officers. I mean, that's the truth of it.
Now, Rex, if you could type in, and I'll say your response, because we keep losing you and you have valuable information, and I'll go around the horn with this too. Are we training our dispatchers out there? Because the dispatchers are so critical to the Mayday training. PJ Norwood I believe he's flying to Charlotte or Myrtle Beach. But PJ and I actually put together a Mayday DVD as well as a DVD for the dispatchers, because all too often the dispatchers are forgotten. Rex, what are you guys doing in Fairfax? He's not.
Audio only. Can you hear me?
No, you're gonna have to type it in. Let's go to Dave Polikoff while Rex is typing, and then I'll relay what Rex is saying. Unfortunately, his connection keeps going in and out. Go, Dave.
You were asking, what was the question you were asking?
About training your dispatchers to be part of the Mayday. When you're out there training, are the dispatchers involved, and are the command officers involved? Because those are the two most important people, and they seem to leave them out.
Yeah, our dispatchers are involved, whereas if we don't acknowledge the Mayday, they'll jump right in if they do hear it. We're kind of at a transition right now, and we are moving away from our firefighters or our active firefighters and officers as dispatchers and into the civilian world. So we have a little bit of growing pains that are going on right now with trying to get them up to par of what we were used to in the past. It's a slow process, but eventually we're going to go all civilian. But they are involved. They usually do not pipe in on the radio at all unless we're not acknowledging something when we do ask for that extra channel so we can communicate directly to dispatch without jumping over top of the guy that's actually having the Mayday. They're really good about having an operator up and ready for us, whatever we want. But like Sam said, to switch to another channel, it's hard enough getting everybody on the same channel and do the right thing on the Fireground. To switch everybody to a different channel, it's just not going to. It's not going to come together on the Fireground. You're always going to lose somebody. So just to switch to another channel, in my opinion, is just one more hassle or hindrance when it comes to running that Mayday. But our dispatchers are they're very helpful. They're trained very well. And whenever we have had an issue, especially if we're not hearing a message, they pipe right in and let us know. They also have the capability of sending us a message right on our computer, or our CAD system, which will make an audible noise that we know they're sending us a specific message, so they don't have to trample on the radio as well.
I don't know what's going on here. We got all these guys from the East Coast, and we all agree on the same thing. Cats are going to start living with dogs. I mean, this is unbelievable. And Rex piped in, sent me a message that in Fairfax the dispatchers are involved in the training. So it's really, really, I can't talk and read at the same time, so I'll have to go back to your thing after I get Sam jumped in here. But the dispatchers are involved in their training, and we need to do a better job of keeping the dispatchers cued in. One thing that I lecturing about Mayday I found is a lot of departments also don't realize that the dispatcher that's assigned to your company or your fire can actually rewind the tape. So as the incident commander, you can ask dispatch to have a supervisor rewind the tape to what the Mayday was, whether it was a lunar report, and then actually read it back to you or text it to you on your department phone or however you normally communicate. So that is a great resource. Sam, why don't you weigh in on this, and I'll read Rex's message. Go ahead. Sam,
yeah, so there we go. So actually, what Chief Polikoff, what Dave was talking about with our firefighters being, we actually had uniformed firefighter rescuers in those positions, and now we're almost, well, within the next year we should be almost completely civilianized and look similar to what Fairfax does with having a fire liaison officer on the floor, a uniformed fire lieutenant or captain there, making the big decisions and ensuring that things are consistent with operations. But when I was actually brought in, my entire recruit class tested and went in the early 2000s. So I was assigned to communications for 2 years and 4 months. I was assigned to our old center and our new center. And what I loved about the new technology was we have, like you said, the dispatcher can replay the information. Well, for example, I mean, every CAD system is different, but with the Motorola stuff, there's a Centricom controller that sits to, actually with our dispatcher, sits to the right. And I used to keep the queue. There was a queue up of every communications that went down on whatever talk group you were monitoring, and you could double-click it and it would replay the information. I would keep that up and running. And a lot of people on my shift started doing it, and I think it started being, maybe it's something that's done across the board these days. So if you had an incident where you had somebody with choppy comms or you couldn't hear them and it was an urgent message, we could double-click and hear it back, and we could relay that to the incident commander. So the technology's there. With ours, I think a lot of departments do this these days. The chief arrives on the scene, assumes the command from the initial incident commander, and you'll hear something like, "Okay, chief, the radio's yours," which means in our department that the only person, really the moderator of the incident, is the incident commander. And what the telecommunicator back at communications is doing is acting as a sentinel or a backup, so that if the incident commander misses a message, they can immediately either requeue it, or they can, if they heard it directly, they can just press transmit and say, "Chief, such and such was saying this."
This is great. Rex is texting me here. He's going to make me look smarter than I actually am. So this is, I like the way this setup is. But he talked about one of the major issues of the cord melting, if you keep it on the outside of your coat, is that it will lock up the channel. So that's very problematic. And then he also mentioned in Houston where the firefighter stayed on the channel with the mic key talking. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that if you have a Mayday manager before the Mayday happens who's coordinating the RIT team and companies that are assigned in tactical reserve to put them in on a different channel, that is about the only way I could think of to solve that, besides Rex is adding in here that they are petitioning Motorola that eventually we may see the ability for dispatch to switch certain companies over. Am I understanding that correct? That would be done remotely to take the human error out of it?
Yeah, there's a process. Can you hear me now?
You're still breaking up, but try as long as you keep it short, we could try to put it together for you.
Okay, so the option of dynamic regroup allows the dispatcher to remotely move a specific radio to another talk room. It's there today, but it's not really user-friendly. I think in this example, it would really help to move the person, either the radio that's locked up, move it off the channel so you can continue your suppression effort, as well as manage your RIT response. But for someone that is talking the entire time, won't let go, and is trying to send a message to their wife, that you can pull them off as well.
I've got to unmute myself here. That is phenomenal, and maybe that's the answer. If it's not user-friendly yet, to be able to have dispatch move the firefighter who's given the Mayday off, it at least gives us some options, and like any technology, it's only going to get better. So the work that you're doing, Rex, is phenomenal, and it could really make a difference in the end, because here we're learning from Fairfax. So it's a credit to your fire department and your chief and what you guys are putting out, because it seems that so many departments out there, we're getting better and better, but they don't want to put out information, and we need to get this information out to everybody. So thank you. That's tremendous. Let's go to Dave Polikoff. You got anything to add on that?
I know that our research is constantly ongoing. I know we're getting ready to. I know there was some. Sam can again correct me if I'm wrong. Sam's my radio guy. Anytime I have radio stuff, I go to Sam. But I know that they're talking about switching portables again. Sam, is that correct? And we're going to actually get newer portables, newer radio system. I know they're switching our whole station alerting system over now. It's no longer going to be off the VHF side. I know it's going to be off the 800 side. So I'm kind of excited to see the new technology that comes out. But it's always changing, and we're always looking into making sure that what we're doing on the Fireground, we run into any issues, we test it, we go back and find out if anybody else had this type of issue, and instead of reinventing the wheel, find out how they overcame these issues and then put those into play as well. But I know that we're looking at new technology that's coming to our county here in the near future, and Sam can definitely touch a lot more onto that. He's into that.
Sam, jump in here.
Yeah, we're going to the next version of the Motorola radios, the 8000s. I'm sure Fairfax is as well. I'm pretty sure. Usually, there's this the Council of Governments region or the National Capital Region. The jurisdictions around DC and including DC are all pretty much on the same page with regards to PPE, certainly apparatus numbering, the NIMS compliance with the plain speak, no 10 codes, that kind of thing, and it carries all the way over to our technology. Doesn't mean we're all going to end up with the same vendors and the same radios, but it seems like that's been the case. I would say within the next couple of years, everybody will probably have this Apex 8000 radio. The good thing about it is it's a multi-band radio, so think about like your next domestic terrorist event where comms are compromised. Let's say your primary communication system is compromised. For example, in Montgomery County, we actually have our old VHF system still active and live. So if our 800 system fails, we have in our radio, and right now it's just the officers. The firefighters don't have a dual band radio. The officers do. The officer can actually switch to our Victor 7 zone and still communicate with our communication center. Our communication center can drop back and punt, go back onto the VHF, and actually we can work business as usual. And that's just our plan B. The folks that are involved in all of this, the research and making sure we kind of like a good squadsman would have. They have multiple plans to cut somebody out of a car. Our telecommunications folks have multiple plans to keep us live and responding to incidents. That's one of the drawbacks. So that's this new radio is a multi-band, so everybody would have the same radio. Everybody would have the capability to operate on the the backup system if God forbid we had something where we had to switch to it. So it's good stuff. Certainly good stuff. Frank, unmute yourself.
Technology. I can't even operate a portable radio. Dave, I want to go to you first, and then I'll have time to read what Rex put in. There's been a question on Twitter from Bill Carney. He does a great job of fire engineering. We really appreciate Bill. Am I pronouncing his name right, Dave? Is it
Carey?
Carey?
Carey.
He knows who he is.
He knows who he is.
Bill Carey does a great job of fire engineering. Really appreciate everything he does and everything that Tincata does so that we can have this hangout today. The question on Twitter came about the Metro. So explain how you get radio out in the Metro, but remember, besides that very small pocket of a Metro's a subway for our Midwest listeners out there, viewers, explain that also in the high-rise sense. Is it true, because I've heard this, I don't know if it's true, but they say if you can't get out in a high-rise, if you can get near the standpipe system that goes up in the stairwell, you can usually increase. So hit Metro and hit upon getting out in a high-rise or a low-rise, because all of our viewers and listeners have high-rises and low-rises in their district. Go ahead, Dave.
With the Metro, we've come a long way with I think I'm echoing through you. There you go. We've come a long way in our Metro system to where we are wired from end to end to be able to communicate in our Metro system, and it works really well. There are times where we're notified right away if we are having an issue in the system, and we set up a daisy chain where we can have people set up along the way to relay communications from the bottom of the system all the way up to the top. Our NCR folks have capability of running a hard line down and connecting everything up. Sam's part of that, as well as a few other folks that are in the county. I've run a handful of metro incidents and I've had to use the daisy chain system of operating off of our talk around channel and what have you, and also using the radio system in the metro system, and it works really well. We also, I know you talked about high-rise, but on the river, the Potomac River that we share with Fairfax and with Loudoun County, we have the capability of communicating down in that area as well. And our communications works really well. High-rise is kind of a unique thing. Majority, I'd say 97% of our high-rise coverage in the county is really good. There's a couple of areas in the Friendship Heights area, Bethesda, right on the Washington, D.C. corridor, where it gets a little iffy. What I like to do when I was a captain, if we were having a hard time getting out, we'd usually break a window and dangle the lowest ranking guy out by the ankles, and we'd go ahead and use him as an antenna. But seriously, we would, if you can get to a window, usually you can improve your communications that way. Sometimes the stairwell might work for you, but again, it's a concrete block, so you're still going to have those issues of getting communications out. What I've always tried to do is look for the open window, and if that doesn't work, we can go to our talk around channel, which is line of sight. All the radios in the apparatus, if they're set to scan, all the portables will automatically pick up the talk around, so everybody on the Fireground will be able to hear it. In the battalion vehicle, we have one of our radios is specifically set up for talk around, so we will always hear. That's our Oscar channel. If anybody's talking on that, if they can't get out anywhere else. We also have vehicle repeater system in our cars, which allows our cars to actually be the repeater and boost communications in high-rise, and that works really well. We've used that several times, especially in the lower end of the county along the D.C. corridor. Those VRS systems in the battalion vehicles work very well, and matter of fact, that's part of our command package. In order to be considered a command vehicle that you can operate out of, you do have to have a vehicle repeating system, vehicle repeating radio in the car, and they're not cheap. I know. I think they're in excess of 30 grand, maybe more. Sam definitely knows the price of that. All the stuff that we have in our county, to me, works really well, and haven't really had much frustration using anything when it comes to river, high-rise, metro, or anything else.
Rex was talking about that they have repeaters built into the metro, and I love something that he just said here, and I'm going to have him on my radio show, Politics and Tactics, because there's a lot of information that bleeds over both ways. But he talks about, for high-rises and stuff, working it into the actual code, the building code, because Sam was saying that, you know, it could be upwards of very expensive. Let me go to Sam first. Sam, can you explain, I had somebody tell me about high-rise fire, and they said something about a leaky cable. I know I spelt it wrong. I don't even know what it is. So is it just a metal antenna? Can you enlighten us on leaky cables, and is that less expensive than doing a repeater?
Yeah, to tie into the last talking about metro, actually it's how our metro system works. We have bidirectional amplifiers spaced along the metro system, and they have it's called radiating cable. And what it does is it radiates RF in and out. So it's just a cable running down the portal, and it allows you to pick up and transmit and receive comms. In high rises, in new construction in Montgomery County, I believe it's 25,000 square feet. That's the mark. So if you're building a new building that's greater than 25,000 square feet, our code says you must have a bidirectional amplifier and all the stuff that goes with it. So the bidirectional amplifier is in a box somewhere in a utility room, maybe in the fire control room. There might be more than one depending on the size of the building. And then you have the conduit and the radiating cable, and you also have bidirectional antennas that actually can look like a light fixture, for example, in a hallway that will pick up. That most recently in Bethesda, I saw some new construction. We did some communications testing in some of our newer buildings just to see how things were working, and we noticed there are actually nice little fixtures in the hallways and common areas that picked up and received our signal. And again, that was a part of our code. The code said you have to have this in here. It's a little harder for existing construction to get them to buy in, but like Dave said, our command vehicles have a vehicle repeater system, a VRS, and we actually have it so we have 2 battalion chiefs assigned to each major incident. They'll actually put their command vehicles on opposite ends of a large building, a high-rise, hit that thing up, and that greatly improves our comms. I try to, every time I see 2 command buggies back to back on an incident, Dave will tell you I'm really, I don't like to go to the battalion chiefs about things. Sometimes they're a little fired up about it, and I'm not a big conflict guy on the Fireground unless it's still on fire, and then all bets are off. But if I see them stacked instead of positioned tactically, think about if you're the ladder truck driver, you're not going to park right behind the second due or the first due ladder truck or your second due. You're going to get a tactical position on that building. It's the same way, the same theory with our vehicle repeater systems. The more the better. You can light 3 or 4 of those things up, and they don't interfere with one another. They just better your comms. So.
Dave, explain why a repeater in the vehicle makes the big difference, and also why sometimes you can hear it when you go direct on that talk around channel and you can't hear it when it's on the repeater, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't understand why that actually works like that.
The way I'll start off with the vehicle repeating system, and I'm by no means a radio guy, so the way it was explained to me was almost like with crowns and stick figures, but the way it works is that you actually become the communications guy, so it doesn't have to go all the way to Rockville and then come all the way back. It goes right to you and then back. It boosts the signal. If I'm wrong, Sam will shake his head no. If I'm right, he'll say, Sam, I kind of have the philosophy down. I know that once it's up and running, I can pick up the signal right away. It greatly improves for everybody else that's on the Fireground, especially when you're having that choppy digital feedback. It clears it up nicely. And Sam can better explain it without the crowns and stick figures.
Yeah, no, the VRS, it basically what it does is when we go to our VRS channels, so we basically the battalion chief will get on the scene, assume the command, and say VRS is active, and the end user switches to one of the VRS talk groups. At the way our zones are built out, at the end of each of our tactical groups, so for there is a VRS talk group there. So you turn to that, and it basically becomes a repeater with the repeater that's actually in the command vehicle, and then the command vehicle takes that audio and puts it into the system. So the way it kind of looks is, end user here, battalion vehicle here. They transmit. It hits here. It hits the battalion vehicle. The battalion vehicle puts it out into the system over here to the communications, the whole network, for lack of a better description. It basically, for those, if you know what a repeater is, it's basically, one person talks, it hits the antenna and broadcasts it back to all the people. So basically, what we do is it's technically a local repeater that ties in to the main system. So everybody else can still hear you operating. So if you don't have a communications problem, you don't have to go to the VRS talk group. Only the people that are having issues typically go to the VRS talk group. I do it out of practice. Any building that I go into that I anticipate issues, so any high rise, any below grade operations, a fire in a basement, I automatically go to it, and there's a way for us to excite the VRS in the command buggies. The chief officers don't like it because it involves you depressing your orange button, your Mayday button. They don't like that. Your emergency, your EB, but it excites that VRS. Most of the battalion chiefs, though, are on it. As soon as they get on the scene, they're toggling it over, engaging the VRS, and it's active.
I told you he'd have a better way to explain it than I would.
Yeah, and I didn't understand a thing he said.
The other thing is, you asked about the talk around. What we tell all our guys in the field is ensure that your radios are on scan. That way you're scanning the channel that you're on as well as the talk around. The way that works is like the old CB, where it was line of sight, and depending upon how far away you are, you can get up to a good mile or more, but it doesn't have to bounce through that repeating system. It just goes right from antenna to antenna. So it's like a ginormous, expensive walkie-talkie. We use that a lot, especially when I was a captain. working in the lower end of the county. When we run alarm bells, we wouldn't bother communication with what was going on. We'd communicate back and forth, and we'd be finished with the call, and that way we wouldn't have to tie up a channel. We use talk around quite often, and I'm pretty sure everybody else in the county does. That way you're not hearing what's going on. You're keeping that channel free and clear for any other incidents that are going on in the county. So I like using the talk around quite a bit. You're still muted, Frank.
Technology. Rex was saying that he didn't know you could scan 800 and talk around. I didn't know that either. So we're in the same boat there. But we're at the witching hour. I really want to thank Tincata Fabrics, Fire Engineering, Bill, sorry for slaughtering your name, and for these guys and all they do for fire engineering and the fire service. I'd like to encourage all of you to write an article about this because there's so many different things, and this isn't the sexiest topic out there, but it's something that officers and chief officers need to know as they come up the ranks, and especially about the repeaters in the car. What are the best practices? So we encourage you all, write an article, fire engineering, send it to me. I'll be sure to take your name off it, put my name in, and send it in like it's my own. No, I'm just kidding. But we really need you to start writing. We have Fire Engineering Magazine, we have Fire Rescue Magazine, Fire Apparatus Magazine, and everything online. So there's no reason to ever write anything for that other company, and I won't mention their name. But Fire FDIC is where it's at. And while I'm only one person, I'll give you a little insight into the mind of a reviewer for FDIC class. I look to see if you taught for one of the other. I don't mind the other shows because that builds our brand. For hey, we go see Sam Villani teach even at a small show in Frederick. Where can I find his content? Where can I find his work product? Fire Engineering or Fire Rescue Magazine. But if you're out there and you're teaching for our direct competitor, and we all know who it is, you get a no from me. That's like trying to get a promotion and sleeping with the boss's wife and then putting it in your resume. It just doesn't work for me. Fire Engineering, FDIC, Fire Apparatus, it is a business where our product is education and training. And we think we deliver the best platforms there. We want you on Fire Engineering, Fire Rescue, Fire Apparatus, and online. And just like Tincata, we thank Tincata for everything they do for firefighter safety. I'm going to hopefully have Rex on my next radio show. Sam and Dave are always regular, but be out there, post the blogs. And for Fire Engineering, FDIC, hope to see you all in Indy. And thank you so much for what you do for the fire service. Rex, your work out there speaks for itself. He was trying to defer credit for himself earlier. It speaks for itself. Everybody knows it. They may not know your name, but they know your work product. So keep up the great work and keep up what you're doing in Fairfax and what Sam and Dave are doing for Montgomery County, Maryland, and the fire service. And that's it. Shannon, you could take us off live.